Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Jesus Stories podcast. This is the podcast which tells the stories of Jesus' life and teachings, and we stop along the way to share some additional insights into the events and teachings we hear about. I'm your storyteller and teacher, George Taylor. Today's episode is the third installment of the Journey to Jerusalem series. Luke has told us that Jesus has set his traveling direction toward his beloved city. However, as he walks, he pauses to teach, to interact with the people he encounters, and to focus some time on his apostles. There is more urgency and power to his words. He has just a few more months to live on this earth, and he knows that once he comes to Jerusalem for Passover, he will be arrested, crucified, and die on a cross. But he also knows that he will rise from the dead, and this is information he shares with his apostles. I'm not sure they quite understand the importance of what he's telling them, but in time they will. Before we start, however, I must remind you that this podcast is indeed supported by you, my listeners, and I thank you for that support. Already we are beginning the year, and I know this is April, not really the beginning of the year, with unexpected expenses and some equipment which had to be replaced, but it is your support which help us keep this podcast going. We've got lots of folks listening, some 3,500 people last month alone, and over 170,000 downloads across the life of this ministry. Won't you join us by visiting our website? It's jesusstories.info. Click or tap on Support This Podcast in the menu, and you'll find a way to support us with direct contributions through my PayPal link or by purchasing some merchandise from vendors who share some profits with us. One of my favorite vendors is Savarista Coffee. For folks like me who have to watch their caffeine intake, this coffee is great. No, I'm going to say it's fantastic. You see, they specialize in decaffeinated and half-caffeinated brews. All their coffees are roasted in small batches, decaffeinated naturally, no chemicals. And here's the best part. As I said, they taste fabulous. Click on the link at jesusstories.info and then look at Support This Podcast in the menu and click there to claim a 25% discount on your first purchase. They will deliver great coffee and offer you more discounts later on. That's Savarista Coffee. All of the flavor, none of the panic. And thank you for supporting us through this fabulous vendor.
Tell me the story of Jesus. Write on my heart every word. Tell me the story most precious, sweetest that ever was heard.
Jesus had been traveling, walking, remember, through the towns and villages as he made his way to Jerusalem. We really don't know where he is at this point in the narrative. It's not really important. What is important is the day of the week. It's a Sabbath day. And Jesus, as an observant Jew, would have visited the synagogue wherever he was on that day. And like many who go to a church service, they might invite a visitor to lunch. So Jesus is invited to the home of a prominent Pharisee after the synagogue service. There's a man there who suffered from swollen joints. Now, some translations call this disease dropsy. Either way, Jesus couldn't miss the man. He was standing right in front of him. So Jesus asks, "Does the law allow for someone to be healed on the Sabbath?" No one answers him. So Jesus reaches out, touches the man, healing him, and then sends him on his way. Then Jesus turns to the rest of the party. "Which of you doesn't work on the Sabbath?" he asks. "If your son or your cow falls into a pit, don't you rush to get him out?" And again, nobody would answer him. Looking around at the guests, he noticed how they would jockey for a prize seat at the table. So he uses this opportunity to tell a parable. When you're invited to a wedding feast, he says, don't take the place of honor. If you do, you're going to be embarrassed when you're told you must move to make room for someone who's more important. Sit in the back and await an invitation to move up to a more advantageous space. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, he says, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then he turns to his host. When you invite people to eat with you, don't invite those who can invite you back in return. Your only reward will be that return invitation. Instead, he says, invite the poor, the cripple, the lame, and the blind. Why? Then at the resurrection of the righteous, God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay you. Remember, at this time, someone who was poor, crippled, lame, and blind was probably the beggar you passed on the street. They literally have nothing. They had no way to pay anyone back for their generosity. They barely had food to eat. Someone sitting at this table heard Jesus teaching and calls out, "What a blessing it will be to attend a banquet at the kingdom of God." This prompts Jesus to tell another story. A man prepared a great meal, he says, and he sent out many invitations for people to come and eat with him. And per the custom of the time, the invitations go out for a particular date, but not with a time. The time will come to them in a later message. When the meal was ready, a servant went out with the message of the time. But the recipients of the invitations started making excuses. I just bought a field. I have to go check it out. I just bought 5 pairs of oxen, and I need to go check them out. I just got married. I can't come. Just excuses. The servant returns with the news for his master. The master was furious, so he sends his servant out again and invites the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind from off the streets to enjoy his hospitality. That was done, but there was still room for more, so the master said, "Go on out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come so that the house will be full. No one from the first guest list will even get a taste of a morsel of my food." Jesus is back on the road again. Large crowds are following him, and he turns to them with these words. If you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else. Your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. Now, these are some tough words. Let's talk about them for a moment. Let's start by defining a term. Jesus says, if you want to be my disciple. What's a disciple? Very simply, in this time, in the first century, a disciple was someone who wanted to learn from someone else. So they would become that person's shadow, if you will, following them to learn what they knew. Now, in today's world, we would call that person an apprentice, but that's really probably too gentle a word. An apprentice learns. A disciple not only learns, but he will attach himself to someone to become like the person he or she is learning from. So if you want to be a disciple of Jesus, he says you must, by comparison, hate everyone else. And then he lists close family members, father, mother, sister, brother, even your own life. And what he's saying is that you must love Jesus so much that it will eclipse the love you have for your family and even for your own life. Nothing is more important than following Jesus. In fact, he says, you must carry your own cross. Now, those words seem a little strange to us. In the first century world of Rome, The cross was a method for executing criminals. One was literally nailed to this cross in such a way that they would eventually die. Sometimes the one to be executed was the one who carried the cross to the site of the execution. So not only must you not love your life more than Jesus, you must be willing to die in following him. Jesus realizes that this is a huge ask for his followers. So he follows this up with some wise advice. Don't begin, he says, until you count the cost. You have to be sure, he says, that this is what you really want to do. And then he gives 2 examples. It's like someone who decides to construct a building. That person would calculate the cost of the building and see if there's enough money available to build it. If you can't complete the building because you run out of money, people are going to laugh at you. Or before a king goes to war against another king, he would sit down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the other army of 20,000. If not, he sends out a delegation to negotiate before the battle even begins. So, Jesus says, you cannot become my disciple without giving up everything you own. Strong words. Jesus closes with this statement. Salt is good for seasoning, but if it loses its flavor, how do you make it salty again? Flavorless salt is good neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown away. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Jesus has told us before that his followers are the salt of the earth. At that time, not in today's world so much, but at that time, salt was different. It could lose its flavor and its preservative characteristics, and when that happens, it's no longer good for anything. This is similar to someone who may decide to follow Jesus without counting what it will cost to be his disciple. They might start out salty, and when they discover the cost for following the Master, they lose their saltiness. Jesus wants us to be aware of the real cost for being his disciple. That cost is everything. People of all kinds gathered around Jesus to hear him teach. This included tax collectors, people who were hired to collect taxes for the Roman government and considered traitors to their own people, by the way. And it included others who were considered to be sinners by the religious powers that be. Those powers included the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law who complained when Jesus would even associate with such people. He would even eat with them, and in that day, who you were willing to eat with indicated an acceptance of that person. So what does Jesus do? He tells a story. Actually, he tells 3 stories, all interrelated. The first is a story about sheep. He says, suppose you have a herd of 100 sheep. Suppose that one of those sheep is lost. Wouldn't you go out and find that lost sheep? And when you found it, you'd carry it home, call all your friends and neighbors, and invite them to rejoice over the one found sheep. In the same way, Jesus says, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. Jesus doesn't stop there. The next story involves a lost coin. Suppose a woman has 10 silver coins. She loses one of those coins. Now, that loss is the equivalent of losing a day's wages. So in her search for the coin, she conducts a major house cleaning. And when she finds that coin, she calls her friends and neighbors to invite them to rejoice with her over finding that coin. In the same way, she says, there is joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. Then Jesus tells the most famous of the 3 stories. A man has 2 sons. The younger of the sons demands his inheritance before his father dies. And even though this is a disrespectful request, the father grants his wish. The son takes all of his inheritance and he leaves home. He goes to a distant country and he spends all his money and living wildly. As his money runs out, a famine comes to the country. He's starving. So he persuades a farmer to hire him. And his job? He feeds the pigs. Now, this is no job for a good Jewish boy. Pigs are considered an unclean animal, but he's hungry. And even the food given to the pigs looks good to him. But he doesn't even get to eat that. Coming to his senses, he thinks, back at home the slaves have food to eat, and here I am starving to death. I know what I'll do. I'll go back home and say to my father, I've sinned against you. I've sinned against heaven. I'm not worthy to be your son, so won't you take me in as a slave? So the young man goes back home. Now, the father, Daddy, has been looking for the son to return. While he was still a long way away, his father sees him, and he runs to greet him in love and compassion. A dignified Jewish man would never run to anyone, but this daddy does, and he embraces his son and kisses him. The son starts into his speech. Father, I've sinned against you. I've sinned against heaven. I'm not worthy to be your son anymore. The father stops him, commands his servants, go get the best clothes in the house, get a ring for my son's finger and shoes for his feet, and kill a fatted calf. We are going to have a party. My son is dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. The younger son's brother, the older brother, was out in the fields at work. He comes home and he hears the music and sees the dancing, so he asks his slave, what's going on? Your brother's come home. Your dad's throwing a party for him because he's back safe and sound. The older brother gets mad and refuses to go into the party. Dad comes out to him, begging him to come into the party. The irate son refuses. I've slaved for you all these years. I've done what you've asked for me. You've never even given me the chance to throw a small party for my friends. Yet when my brother comes back after squandering your money on who knows what, you throw him a party? Dad looks at his oldest. Look, dear son, you've always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found. Did you hear what all three of these stories have in common? Someone, something, a sheep, a coin, a son, is lost. But then that something or someone is found. Each finding triggers a party, both here on earth and in heaven. And in Jesus' associations with people considered as sinners, he is searching for the lost person in hopes of throwing a party in heaven. As the party begins, we close out today's episode of Jesus Stories. Thank you for being here. In just a moment, I'll share what we'll talk about in the next episode. But I must remind you again that this is a listener-supported podcast. I depend on your financial and prayer support to keep going. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we've had to replace some equipment this year already to keep things humming along. In short, I've spent donations that I haven't even received yet. Would you pray about how you can help us? To find out the ways in which you can help us out, visit my website. It's jesusstories.info. Click or tap on the menu for Support This Podcast. You may make a direct donation, purchase some Jesus Stories merch, or buy from one of our vendors who share profits with us and may offer you a discount as well. Right now, the first 50 buyers will receive a 25% discount at my partner website. That's at GT Photos. Visit the Jesus Stories website to find that link and the discount code for your discount on fabulous art for your home or your office walls. And don't forget, you also get a 25% discount when you use my link to Savorista coffee. Great coffee, all of the flavor, none of the panic. Next time, we're going to talk about Jesus lost and found. You heard the three parables at the end of this episode, so let's explore them a little more deeply. That's going to be next time. I thank you for joining me today. God bless you.
Tell me the story of store.